technical architect at Microsoft. Kevin has over 20 years of technical industry experience in various systems engineering and consulting roles within organizations such as Verizon, Hewlett-Packard, and Microsoft. Focusing early in his career on engineering Microsoft Exchange solutions, his passion for digital communications evolved over time into later versions of Exchange and then into the instant messaging, collaboration, and telecom capabilities of Microsoft Lync, Skype for Business, and Teams. Kevin also specializes in cybersecurity, helping customers and partners understand how important this area is and drive awareness about cybersecurity frameworks and solutions that need to be implemented today. Kevin, welcome. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All righty. Hey, thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate it. I did start the recording just to make, again, everyone aware that this call is being recorded. And hey, it's a pleasure to meet everybody. So we've got a couple of slides here that I want to go through first, right, to tell you more about how Teams meetings and Teams calling and so forth works. And much as we are all working from home, I just had someone show up at my door, so I'm really hoping my wife grabs that here real quick. The joys of working from home, right? But so this call is not really meant to tell you about how Teams in general works. I'll go over a couple of things like that, but I'm going to assume that the knowledge is there, and if not, we're happy to get on a different call and talk about that. But let's really focus on Teams callings and meetings and what that really means. So we are all right now, obviously, on a Teams meeting. This meeting right now, we've got roughly about 50, 55 people on here, right? That's fantastic. We can host up to about 300 people on here, and we can get video screens up to about 50 right now. That's going to go up, right? There's a lot of changes coming with Microsoft Teams. It seems like every day, every month, there's so many more features that are lighting up within Teams, and I'll go through a few of those, right, and tell you about a few of my favorites and how I work in Teams every single day at Microsoft and how we talk with people all over the world and why the call quality of those calls are so good. I'll go through some of the networking that helps to drive that as well. So with that, let's go through a couple of these slides, and then we'll segue into the more exciting demos, right? So staying connected, that's what we're all doing now. I mean, we've been doing this for almost a year now at home as the pandemic has come about. But we have to look at Teams and say that Teams is not just a replacement for Skype for Business. Skype for Business was awesome. It did a great job, when it comes to phone calls and instant messaging and screen sharing and sharing files. Well, Teams is that, but it's actually a whole new iteration of what Skype for Business ever was, right? And it can do so much more now, right? So when we talk about phone system, we'll go through that. Teams can actually replace your entire PBX infrastructure that may still be sitting in your office with telephone lines attached to it, and those telephone lines aren't going anywhere because no one's there to answer those phones. So most organizations have figured out ways around that may not be the best way to do it, but it works, right? But how can you evolve that into something more permanent and enable those phone lines to actually just go right to your employees? So we talk about online meetings. We talk about hey, how can I pick up Teams as a client, either on my desktop, on my phone, using the web version of it? How can I just pick it up and dial a number? Can I dial a number? Can I dial a number out to someone's cell phone here locally, in a different country, in a different continent, international and local calling? We've got plans for all of that. How do you handle that if you're currently in a long-term contract with a carrier like Verizon? How do you still bring the telephone numbers over and attach those to your Teams client to be able to use your Teams client as your focal point for making and receiving those calls? There's ways to do that, right? So we'll go through some of that too. So let's hit on a couple more of these here. So when we think about meetings, right? There's we're obviously in this meeting. We're in meetings all day, but a lot of us are remote, and you've probably noticed this. There's you get on a meeting of maybe 10 or 15 people, maybe more. There's probably 3 or 4 people that are very active in a meeting. How do you engage with other people in the meeting? You invited all these other people to hear their opinions, to have them help you in this project or whatever it may be, but how do you make them feel more included? Well, there's ways that you can do that, including what if there's someone in the office who might have a hearing handicap, right? How do you help include them, make the meeting more inclusive so they can they can see what's going on instead of maybe perhaps trying to read lips. They can actually see what's being transcribed on the screen. So we'll go through that in a few minutes as well. Um, so when I look at Teams and Teams meetings, sure, you can chat, you can meet. I'm going to start up here in the upper left here. You can chat, meet, and call individuals both inside and outside of your organization. So it's not just inside your organizations that you can use the Teams client, that you can share video with, that you can have a meeting with. So you can enable your tenant, your company in Microsoft Teams to talk with anyone else out there who has Teams as well, and people who don't have Teams, right? And within Teams, you can of course chat, you can make those calls, you can set up meetings, but you can edit documents directly from within Teams. If there's a Word document, we could pull up the Word document within Teams in the upper right here, and we could have 20 people sitting there editing the same document. Everyone, we've got to get this document done very quickly. Let's take the next 10 minutes and everyone take a piece of this, a section, and start writing it out. You're all in the same document. You're all seeing what each other are writing pretty much live. It's amazing how these co-shared capabilities, co-authoring capabilities, and in Teams and across Microsoft 365 really do work, and they work well. We use them all the time. And then of course there's Teams. When we look at Teams, where can you not use Teams now? Okay, so there's an app, obviously, on the desktop. That's what the majority of us are using right now. There's an app on iOS and Android devices that you can download. That's no cost. It's part of your license, part of your subscription. There's the web browsers. You take Edge, Internet Explorer. You take Chrome. You take Firefox. You take all the major browsers, and you can open up a Teams portal right in there that gives you the full functionality of what Teams, the desktop app, can do. Then, of course, we've got phones, we've got meeting room devices, we've got all of that. Again, I'll show you a flavor of some of those here in just a few minutes. So there's nowhere you can't log in to Teams, right, and have that same Teams interface across all of those different devices. So I don't have to train someone on, okay, how to use Teams on the smartphone? How do you use Teams on the desk phone or the app, whatever. It's all designed to be as seamless as possible, so that your users, your employees can just work and not have to worry about, how do you do what, where, and when. Okay, so Microsoft Teams, there are 115 million daily active users in Teams. 115 million, that's a lot of people every day logging into Microsoft Teams. We last released that number back in November, so I'm sure it's gone up. It's been going up quite a bit every month here. We also said Microsoft just released their earnings earlier this week, but in there was another number. It said that over 60 million people are logging in to the iOS or Android app every single day and using it. That's how popular Microsoft Teams really is. Then if you look at Gartner reports and Forrester reports, you can see where Teams is a leader in a lot of those different areas. So when you think about Teams and your phone numbers, right, you can keep your existing phone numbers. Whether you have a general service line, a number that you advertise on your website, hey, to get in touch with us, call here, right? And then what happens when someone calls that general number? Well, they hear, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 1 for sales, 2 for accounting, 3 for HR, or dial 0 for the operator. Those are all auto attendants and call queues. Teams can do all of that. So you can take that general number that you have published on your website, you can port that over to Microsoft Teams, right? It's a very, very simple process most of the time, right? It takes about a week or so to do. And then that number lands in your tenant within Microsoft 365. Well, then from there, we define rules and auto attendance and those call queues on what to do when, right? What happens when someone presses 1? Who does that call then route to? You can set all of that up in Microsoft Teams. Okay. Then, of course, there's different calling plans that you can pick up depending on the level of activity that people have when it comes to calling, and you can mix and match. So let's say if you're an organization of, keep it simple, maybe 100 people, right? Do all 100 people need this license, whether they use it or not? Absolutely not, right? And in fact, most of the time when we look at the calling behaviors of organizations, a lot of people will call each other. They don't call outbound. Well, if you're calling each other, that's within Teams. You don't need a calling or subscription for that to connect to the outside network, right? So maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10 people. That's where you need that local or long distance plan assigned to those folks. So let's move on here a little bit. We talked about auto attendance a little bit. I'll highlight a few more of these. You can do things like I don't know who I need to reach when I dial that general number in Teams. So I'm going to say the name of the person, that I might think is responsible for this or that, or maybe I saw that person's name on a website somewhere, right? Dial by name directory search, pretty incredible. Custom greetings and menus. So custom greetings, what about a holiday schedule? What about the Thanksgiving or recent Christmas and New Year's holidays? How about setting up a schedule ahead of time for that and pre-recording a message for your customers as they try to dial those numbers during those holiday periods? How does all that work? Hey, it's all within Teams. But what about if you're a larger organization and you have a team of, say, help desk folks, right? Maybe you're an engineering organization and you have a team of 10 or 15 or hundreds or thousands of people that need to be part of a help desk organization, right? That you press 1 to get I'll make up Comcast, for example. If you need TV support, you press 1. You need internet support, you press 2. You need voice support, you press 3. How does all that work? So Teams can do a lot of that, but when you're talking about those larger call centers, typically they need a lot more integration, right? A lot more reporting functionality, a lot more customization. So in those cases, we actually partner up with most of the major contact center solution providers who are now qualified to integrate seamlessly within Microsoft Teams. Whether you want to keep that contact center on premises or you want to use their contact center that's in the cloud, Teams in the cloud, their contact center in the cloud will integrate and hand off calls seamlessly. So again, the point is there's no infrastructure. You don't need that server in a server rack in a closet or a data center in your local environment anymore. It's all up in the cloud. So let's continue on here. Talking about Teams and meetings, I think a couple of you all saw Teams Together mode. I was sitting here playing with that before we started the call. This is what it looks like here in the upper left. I'll demo that here in a few minutes. Then we talk about dynamic views, right? So instead of just the normal block patterns, right? The 50 video screen blocks on a screen, that gets kind of boring after a while. All day in, day out, as we try to work from home during the pandemic, right? So here Teams has switched it up a bit. You can get a together mode, right? You can get a dynamic view where you control what it all looks like on your end, right? Then there's something called live captions. Okay, so this is really interesting. I'm going to share, this is my screen here that I'm viewing all of you in. I'm going to turn on live captions. I'm going to turn it on, but then I'm going to go back to the slides. But I want you all to do this as well. So everyone should be most of us are in a Teams client right now. I want you to go here, and you all are going to see this work throughout the duration of the meeting. So go up to your ellipsis here, the 3 dots, right? And then go down here and say, turn on live captions. And give it a few seconds and watch what happens. Okay, so I'm the presenter. You can see me, Kevin M., where I just said, give it a few seconds and watch what happens. Okay, and now you can see everything I'm saying is actually being transcribed in real time on my screen here. Okay, I'm going to move off of that and assume you all have that in place and you can see that. Okay, pretty good. It understands it's not just English, of course. There's I think there's 20 something input languages, and soon in a meeting like this, you'll be able to translate languages like that. You'll get 20 something input languages and up to 64 output languages. So I like to call this the Star Trek Universal Translator. Okay, if anyone's seen Star Trek, they talk to aliens all the time and everyone speaks English. Well, they actually have a translator behind them. That's what this is, and it's done in real time. It's amazing how this actually works. So when you think about in the education space, I think about parent-teacher conferences. Okay, I've got 3 kids. Okay, now our teacher speaks English, we speak English, but English is not the primary language for a number of students that are in some of the classes that my kids are in. So how do they communicate more effectively? Through something like this, using the translation option in Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Live meetings. Okay, so something else I'll highlight real quick. You can see my background. My background is just a picture I took out of my backyard. It's a nice, pretty view, so I like to think that I'm out there all the time, right? Well, I'm working every day, but I can make this whatever I want now, right? I see a couple of people might have a background going, but I can apply background effects here, and I can upload whatever picture I want, right? I could blur my background. Watch what happens. Watch how quickly that is. So now you see my office my home office in the background just blurred out. These are canned pictures, meaning they come. Everyone should have these pictures automatically. Anthony, I see you moving yours around. That's great. But then I can load up, again, other pictures. Here's a picture of in Hawaii I took a couple years ago. Right. Then here's some more of my background. Hey, if I want to show up on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, I can do that as well. Have a little bit of fun in your meetings by doing this. Right. Load up whatever you'd like. A lot of people just have logos in their background, and that's fine too. Whatever you'd like. Right. So let me go back to my other background here.
Kevin, one thing I do want to point out too that's been on a trend that I've seen across a lot of different organizations right now in terms of the digital world that we live in is accessibility. So back to the live captions, and I'm sure other features are going to come out, but there is a big push to make sure that all technology is now accessible, whether it be your website or an application you're developing, or even a meeting tool like Teams, making sure that it's accessible not only to your own employees, but people that are your potential customers that you need to interact with outside of that. So I think we're going to see more and more about digital accessibility in the future here. And it's great to see that Microsoft is thinking about this in advance.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And if anyone has any questions as we're going through the presentation, please feel free to mention something in the chat window or come off mute, go on video preferably, and we'll go ahead and address those. So just a few more slides, and then I'll break into a few demos. I'll show you how some of this stuff works. So we talk about meetings, we talk about callings, but there's also something else out there. What if I have the need to host a meeting for an audience that's much greater than 300 users? Okay, well, there's a Teams Live event that's meant to host up to 20,000 people there. Now, you don't want a totally interactive meeting with an audience that size, because you may hear of 20,000 different dogs barking in the background at one time, and that does no one any good. So this is it's more of a production. It's more of, you have a presenter, you have a producer, you have a director, right? And then in the right-hand side here in the screen, you can see that there's a chat window. That's how the audience interacts with the presenter. So you might have someone looking at the queue for these questions and bringing those up to the presenter to answer those things live. So Teams Live events, we use them all the time for a lot of the training events that we do, where we will have thousands of people across the world logged in here. And you can see here in the example, you can see that we've got the translation feature going on between Chinese and English. You can see that switching back and forth as she's presenting here. So again, great stuff. So when it comes to excuse me, Microsoft Teams devices, right? How about these headsets that a lot of folks are on the call here that I see on video? A lot of people are on speakerphones. Speakerphones are great, but they do pick up a lot of noises in the background here. Whereas the headsets, it's very much, I've got a lot of noise canceling going on here. This headset, by the way, that I'm on, I love it. I talk to my coworkers all the time about it. It's 6 years old. It's a Sennheiser headset. I love it. It's very comfortable, and it lasts me all day. The only thing I've ever had to do to it is replace the battery, which was, I think, like $30 on Amazon or something. Real easy to maintain this device. So in addition to headsets, there's desk phones, there's mobile phone stations, there's hockey pucks, speakerphones. Then, of course, there's the mobile phone app, PC app, and then when we talk about meeting rooms, there's conference room devices, Teams rooms, and then larger collaboration devices. I'll show you some examples here coming up. So this is just a snippet of the hundreds of different devices from roughly about a half dozen or so different manufacturers, depending on the category that they're in. So we've got the Polycom, Crestron, AudioCodes, Yealink are just a couple of the Teams phones manufacturers that are out there. Then, of course, there's high-end speakers, or I'm sorry, headsets from Bose that are now qualified to work with Microsoft Teams, to the smaller Jabra earbuds, to again the Sennheiser headsets that I've got. And then, of course, there's webcams. I'm on a Brio, Logitech Brio 4K webcam right now talking to you. And as far as the speaker, the hockey pucks go, I've got a Sennheiser one. I've got a Jabra sitting right here next to me. Just in case I am on these all day, in case one dies, I can quickly flip over to that speakerphone for some of my last meetings. Then we've got, excuse me, a couple of new devices coming out on the right-hand side. These are Microsoft Teams displays. They are actually out now, so please ignore the coming soon sign up above. But these are displays that you can join a video call on these displays on your desk, right? And the price point is just a few $100s for these. So a couple more. Let's talk about meeting rooms, right? So meeting rooms, it's really interesting. Microsoft makes, with our manufacturers, a lot of devices that are meant to reuse the equipment that's currently in your conference rooms, in your office. Now, obviously, not a lot of us are in conference rooms right now, but hopefully soon, most of us will be going back. So what if you have a TV? Maybe it's a 55, a 65-inch TV that's used for presentations in a conference rooms. That might have cost $1,000 to $2,000, depending, right? Depending on the brand and what it can do. Well, you don't want to get rid of that. You want to be able to reuse that. So these devices that you're seeing up here, the collaboration bar, the Teams rooms, and so forth, these are meant to reuse that equipment. They've got HDMI standard connections to it, right? So, take the HP Elite Slice with a Logitech Brio here. A lot of these are with control panels. These control panels, they allow you to reserve a room when you're reserving a conference room in Microsoft Outlook, right? And this device will pick up that reservation. So when it's time to walk in and join a meeting, how many times have you done that in the past? And it takes forever, it seems, to get the devices up and working. Well, here with this, because you've reserved the room and Teams recognizes that, and so does this device, in the left-hand panel, you see the upcoming meetings. So you walk into a room and you click join and everybody's on. It's that simple. And that's by design to enable you to get into a meeting as quickly as possible and as easy as possible, so you're not sitting there messing around with equipment for the first 10 minutes of a 30-minute meeting. We've all been there, right? And then, of course, over here on the right, there's the Microsoft Surface Hub 2 that's out now. Amazing devices. I've used these in a lot of presentations in Microsoft technology centers. There are plenty of videos out there on YouTube that talk about these, so I'll let you all do some research on that if you're interested. But let's talk real quick for a moment. Okay, so I went through, just gave you a high level what Microsoft Teams calling can do, in telecom and meetings. Well, what makes it different? A lot of vendors can do that, right? Well, what makes it different? What makes the quality of that call different? How can my voice project for hours on end in a conference call that might span the globe, or maybe just a region, right? How does all of that work? So when you think about, and this is surprising to a lot of people, which is why I bring this up, the Microsoft Azure network. Azure is the foundation for everything Microsoft has in the cloud. It runs Office 365. It runs a lot of our security products. It runs email. It runs Xbox Live. There's 100 million people, kids and adults, using Xbox Live every single day now. It runs on the Azure network, right? The Azure network is 100,000 miles of a private fiber network across the world, right? So what we've done is excuse me, we've worked with about 3,500 different ISPs like the Comcasts and Verizon Fios and so forth. And we've actually put an edge node into their networks at various spots throughout that, with the idea being that, hey, no matter where you're calling in from your ISP, you're just one or two hops away from our network, because we know as soon as you get onto our network, onto the Azure network, that's where we can control the quality of the packets, your voice encoding, so that you have the highest priority across that network to be able to get through to the other side in a crystal clear quality voice conversation, right? So the Azure network is amazing when we think about what it is and how big it is. Microsoft, we've got data centers all over the world. We've got over 100 different data centers out there. In fact, there's more data centers that Microsoft has running all these different services than Amazon and Google combined. It's a lot of data centers. It's a lot of
Kevin,
knowledge. Go ahead.
Quick question for you, Kevin. So I'm one of the non-technical folks in the room, and I saw Microsoft likes to sync data centers in the ocean. And I know we had a potential video. We're not going to play it right now, but maybe you can. I don't know if others on the call have seen Microsoft's testing of syncing data centers into the ocean. But real quick, maybe you can touch on that for the audience.
Sure, yeah, that's a great side story. And there are great YouTube videos out there. They're only 2 or 3 minutes apiece about how Microsoft just a few years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, we actually built a submersible data center. Right, it's a huge cylinder. It had something like 1,000 servers in there, and we sunk it in a test to see if it would work. Right, it worked amazing. The results. So we sunk it, and I think it was down there for about a year or two. And then we brought it up, and it had barnacles and algae and everything else all over this previously white cylinder of data centers. So what we found was that the number of servers that failed during that time were a fraction of what normally fail in a normal data center, in one of our data centers, one of your data centers, whatever. Right. So we know already, hey, we could save some money by doing that. But why did we do that in the first place? It wasn't really to test the resiliency of servers under the water. Well, there was, you might think of cooling. Okay, cooling is one reason. That's not the primary reason. The primary reason is that when you look at this map that's up here on the screen, you say, wow, it's a lot of lines. It's a huge network. But when you think about, where do the majority of people on the planet live? The majority of people live within 100 miles of any coastline out there, right? I forget what the actual figure is, but building a data center in a region to support major cities or countries, it's a very hefty expense, right? Well, what if I could just take a smaller subset of that data center to run that Microsoft Teams services, the Azure services, the email services, the Xbox Live services? What if I could take one of those smaller data centers for a fraction of the cost, and I sync it just off the coast of any one of these major areas that perhaps aren't big enough for me to justify building a data center there, but I can take a small subset of those services and put them there and connect them to the Azure network? Yeah, that's really what it's for. So just very innovative thinking on that. The story is amazing out there. When you go out to YouTube, just look up Microsoft data centers submerged. Thanks, Anthony, for bringing that up. That's a great story. So with that, let's focus on a couple of demos.
2 quick questions that we have in the chat here before we get into the demo. Mr. Conway from Agile Therapeutics, is a transcript of the live captions available after the recording? So I'm assuming this question is, if you are doing the live transcripts the entire time and recording it, do you have the ability to share those live transcripts?
Yes. Yes, we can. And on that, you bring up a really interesting point. So because those transcripts are there, like the closed captioning is still going, but if you turn on transcription, right, it does transcribe everything. So this video is saved to Microsoft Stream. Okay, it's another cloud service that's out there that's part of your M365 subscription. Okay, so let's say I was on vacation last week and I missed a team meeting. And I knew that they were talking about a project that I was on, but obviously I'm on vacation, so neither here nor there. I don't want to watch an hour-long recorded session of my coworkers, talking. I want to go right to the section where they started talking about my project. Maybe it was 20 minutes in. I can actually search for keywords. Maybe that project has a name. I can search for keywords and it goes right through the transcription and it says, oh, your manager started talking, because I got the name up there, your manager started talking about that project at 20 minutes and 4 seconds in. Okay, so now I know I can go right to that point in the video and start playing. A lot of innovative features right in there. Yeah, that's a great question. You had another question.
One more from Mr. Schmidt from New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. Is this a standard team meeting, or are you leveraging the team's live event functionality?
Great question.
Looks like it was answered via your presentation, but maybe just a quick qualifying comments on that.
Yep, no problem. So this is just a Teams regular meeting where we can host up to 300 people now in here. So I think now we've got, if I went to a large gallery that's in preview right now, I'm on a preview client here. I can take it up to 50 different live video feeds right in here, and that's going to increase here in the near future. So yeah, this is just a standard call that we just set up. So pretty much, let me go in here. I'll just show you how I set it up. So what we're seeing here on my screen now, this is a demo environment. This is my own demo environment. It's an Azure virtual machine. It's a PC running in the cloud. I'm doing a remote connection into it through a remote desktop. It's just Windows 10 sitting here and connected to a demo environment. This demo environment has users, it has emails, it's got presentations, it's got files. So it looks like a real environment as we go through this. So how did I set this up? I simply go to appointment. I say new email or new item, and I go to appointment. Okay, and I say test appointment, and I want to make it for today. It's hour or so from now. But where am I going to host it? How do I get that meeting join information in here? Okay, I'm just going to click on this add-in. When you install Teams in an environment on your PC where Outlook already is, you get this plugin. There's nothing I had to do to put this in. But now check this out. I'll show you a couple things in here that just happened. I hit Teams meeting, right? So now it says join Teams meeting. We're not going to do that, of course, because we're already in one. But look at what it did. It included the meeting information in here. I had to do nothing. So it's not like there's a lot of other solutions out there where, hey, if I want to share a screen, I have to go to this product. If I want to have dial in information, I have to go here and check the box. And okay, where do I want the dial in number to be? What region are the majority of my people coming into that call? I've got to know all of that. I've got to set it all up. Here, I click the button and everything and more I just described is already in here. Let me show you. So here I've got a hyperlink to join a Microsoft Teams meeting. Okay, so that I click on that. You can see how I hover over it. That's the Teams meeting invitation code. We can't memorize this, of course. So we just click on it and we join. It's that easy. And then by default, if I've got a Teams client, it comes right up. If I want to join it on the web, it comes right up. Again, using Internet Explorer, using Edge, using Chrome, using Firefox, all the major browsers are supported in here now, which is great. But let's go into this. This is interesting. I've got a dial-in number here, and I think on this call I saw a couple people dial in. Okay, dial-in information is included in here. So, and you notice here how we've got a comma, and then the pin, and then a pound. That's so that if I'm driving down the road and I want to dial in, all I have to do is hit that, and it dials and it joins me right in. There was no memorizing pins or flipping screens as I'm driving, which we all shouldn't be doing, right? But it enters me right in. So. But what if we're obviously the most of us are in the U.S. here. What if I'm hosting a call and I've got some Canadian counterparts, which I talk to all the time? What if I need them to give them dial-in information? Well, they could call this 213 area code, which just happens to be in Los Angeles, right? That's just where this demo tenant is plugged out of. But what if they're dialing in from Canada? What if they're dialing in from Singapore, Australia, anywhere like that? That's a long distance call for an hour on end times 10 people from your office in Sydney, times 10 people. That's a lot of money in long distance calls. So how can we avoid that? There's cost avoidance. So I just simply click on that link where it says find a local number. Wow, here's my local dial-in number for Sydney. Brussels, there's something like 100 and some different country access codes in here. Here's Canada. We talked about that. Here's China. Not all locations. Russia has many, many different locations, of which we don't cover them all. But there's going to be some limitations like that here. But that's cost avoidance. So all of a sudden, you're not being charged for those long distance calls. It's all part of Microsoft Teams and the cloud. Okay. Any questions on that? That's a big differentiator.
Yeah, I think you hit some of the questions on calling in from the car and everything like that. I think it'd be great to pivot to the Teams experience from the phone to the web browser, all of that now.
You bet. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of this. All right. So when we think about Microsoft Teams, so again, I'm in my demo tenant here. Here's the app. All right, where most of us are using this. I'm not going to go through it, here, but when we look at this, when you light up the calling features of Microsoft Teams, many of you probably don't see this calls on your client right now. Okay, so here I've got, this is just like a calling pad, very similar to your cell phone. I've got speed dials, right? Who's speed dial number 1, right? Here's all my contacts for work. You could have family in here, whoever it may be, right? Here's a history of calls in here. This is probably just me testing inbound and outbound calling on this, making sure my demo environment was up and running in preparation for today. So, and of course, here's voicemails. Well, voicemails, this is interesting. I could go in here and I could play this, right? But for every voicemail you get, because Teams is integrated with everything else across Microsoft 365, remember we were talking about file sharing within M365 as well as within Teams, right? Well, voicemail is the same way. Voicemail, here I got a call in from a wireless caller. This went on for 5 minutes. I think I just left the line open and started talking. That's what this is. It's transcribed in here. I get an audio, an MP3 file of the actual recording, because transcription is not perfect, right? Let's all be honest here, but it does a pretty darn good job. So, but then where it did mess up, I've got a recording I can listen to. Okay. So when I want to do meetings, I told you how to set up those meetings in Outlook. So that meeting would appear here in my Outlook calendar. Again, this is all a demo environment. These are just examples in here, but check this out, right? It's all in here. Now look at this. I go to calendar here in Teams, and you can see they match. I set up a meeting in Teams, it goes to Outlook. I set up a meeting in Outlook, it goes to Teams. It's all integrated in. You're not supposed to have to think about, hey, where did I make this meeting? Was it in Teams or was it in Outlook? No, it's supposed to be seamless, so you can get out there and just do the work that you need to do during the day. Okay, so we're looking at the app here, right? We're looking at Outlook here. Let me minimize this. So let's go here. What about from those web browsers? You simply go to teams.office.com. I think that goes to Microsoft.com. There we go. It logged me in. I don't know if you saw that yet or not. I'm already logged in. And it brings up the Teams app. Well, that Teams app in the web browser looks exactly the same as what I'm seeing here on the full app, because it is the same, right? So you don't have to install these apps everywhere, just like you don't have to install Word, the full app anymore. You can go right to Word within Microsoft 365. There it is right there if I were to open it up. Okay, so now what's interesting is let's get back to calling. Let's say I want to port over those numbers, right? I have a desk number sitting in my old office, right? That it's not going anywhere because it's tied to a local PBX server that's been sitting there. Okay, so I'm going to port it over to Microsoft. Now, if I go here to calls, and this is in my web browser again, I go to dial a number. Well, I always forget what my number is, right, in my demo environment here. So here it is. It's a reminder. So watch what happens when I call this number. I'm going to call it from my cell phone here. And hang on just a moment. Okay, so here it comes. Watch what happens. I'm getting called in both places where I'm logged in. Okay, so let's say I want to pick it up here from this web browser. Watch what happens. I pick it up from here, and I've got a really bad echo in my ear when I do that because the audio from the demo environment's coming through to my headset as well. But you saw that both areas were ringing, but when I picked up one, the other one stopped ringing. Right? Teams recognizes that. Let's do it one more time. And I want to show you something else. So this here is the Microsoft Teams app running on an Android phone. I'm mirroring the screen of an Android phone here on my desk here. I'm wired up. But let me unlock it here real quick. Okay. This is the Teams app that's in here. Okay. I'm going to just double click on that. And you can see it's a very similar design to what else is out there. So if we go to Teams here, right, you can see the different teams and different channels and so forth that are here. But let me dial it again. And I have to bring that back into the foreground. So it was ringing in the other area. I don't know why it's not now, but that's okay. Just a few minutes ago when I tested this out, it should be ringing this here. It's not right now. The live demo guide's here. But anyhow, that's really in a nutshell what Teams meetings and calling is all about, right? It's all about, enabling you to log in from anywhere, securely. Security behind this, that's a whole different conversation. We'll probably schedule something like that coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I just wanted to show you how seamless this was, how it works on the back end to get you thinking about, hey, how can I take my telephone numbers in my office right now and port those over to Microsoft Teams? And also think about, hey, if I'm under a Verizon contract right now, how can I take those numbers still and bring them over to Teams while still still under that Verizon contract? There's ways to do all of that as well. So Anthony, go ahead.
Kevin, if you don't mind, I'm just going to throw, because I saw some people chatting similar stuff, and I think this applies even to us as well. On that point about phone numbers, because that's kind of the new thing that I think a lot of people are not familiar with. Mm-hmm. So Domain has offices with phone systems in each one of the offices. All those phone numbers are coming through Comcast or Verizon or whatever it might be right now. Those are not connected to our Teams out of the box using the standard kind of Teams Office 365 chat video conferencing functionality that we have right now. So the first point of clarification is, in order to get dial tone to work with Teams, is that in the built-in package, or you need some upgraded version of Teams? That's number one. And then number two is, how do you pick those phone numbers, or do you just port existing phone numbers? Just talk a little bit about that.
Sure thing. So this right here, to enable this calling option, right, where I get the option to dial a number out, and I have a telephone number obviously assigned to me. That is a calling plan, just like you have in your cell phone, just like you have in your phones in your office. You need to add this calling plan onto your Microsoft Teams account. Again, if you have an office of 100 people, going back to that original example I used, you have an office of 100 people and only 5 of them need that subscription. Only 5 of them get it. That's fine. If a 6th one comes on board, you add it to the 6 and you assign a telephone number to them. That's answer number one. But answer number two is, porting numbers is one thing, because you want to keep your original numbers. It might be a number that you've had for 10 or 15 years, or your company has had for 50 years. You don't want to get rid of that. You want to keep it. Everybody knows it. You could port that number over. But Rashad, what if you open up a new office and you're in Microsoft Teams now? You're committed. You're in Microsoft Teams. You don't have a PBX anywhere. It's all in the cloud. What do you do then? How do you get a new number for that office and maybe the 20 employees that are going to be in that office who need a desk number? That's where you go into Microsoft Teams and say, hey, I need a new service number, or I need a new user number, and I need 5 of them in this area code right here. You give any major area code throughout the country, and there's an area code there that you can pick those numbers from, and you'll get your choice. Hey, you asked for 5. Here's 5. Do you want these? No, give me another 5. And it's kind of like a bank of numbers that we're pulling from that you can then pluck out and assign to your users or as your general number. Great question.
You would stop paying Verizon or Comcast for those phone numbers, or AT&T or whatever it is, and it would all be consolidated under the Teams subscription.
Spot on. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Domain Technology Partners can help you do all of that.
So we were going to get into a case study that Domain Technology Partners just did with one of our great clients, Staffing the Universe, with about 120 users. We only have about 10 minutes left, and the chat is blowing up with a lot of questions. So what we will do after this is point you to that case study of staffing the universe. After this call, we have a link on our website where you can go and read through exactly what Kevin here has here in his slide deck, which is the problems and issues of a traditional phone system and modernizing an organization to this system, and the pain points that are there and the problems that we've solved. So we're going to pause on that piece of the presentation because I want to make sure that we can answer a lot of the questions that are here in the chat. So I'm going to go to one here. Kevin and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, is the setup of current phones in our office. So a lot of organizations, including domain technology partners, has these phones that we've bought, hardware anywhere from $150 to $300 a phone, depending on what you're doing. They're sitting unused in your office. And the question becomes, can these integrate with Teams? And Kevin, I want you to take a stab at that, but we also talked about there's programs with these different phone companies on either buyback programs and stuff. So I'm going to let you touch on that real quick, because that is obviously a cost that somebody invested in. Now, what can we do with that if we do plan on moving in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. That comes up quite a bit. So I'll answer it a couple of different ways. So number one, let's just talk about the phones, right? Can I take my existing phones, and maybe if you look at your phone right now in your office, or you think about it, maybe it's from Polycom. Okay, so Polycom's interesting because that's a manufacturer that makes phones that work on a variety of different systems. You just have to go into the back end admin side of that phone and say, flip it over to a Teams phone. In that case, you can reuse it, right? That's the beauty of it. That's quite a bit of cost savings, right? But if you take a standard phone like from Cisco or from Avaya, they only work on their systems. So the answer is probably not. You cannot reuse those. However, and this is the second part to your question. However, when we think about desk phones, think about personas. Think about each one of us that are on this call. We're different age ranges. We have different things. I prefer this. There might be someone else from a different generation, one of the 5 generations at work right now, who prefers a desk phone or a speaker phone that's on the desk phone, or just a little hockey puck speaker phone. I have this hockey puck connected right now. I can't show you right now. But think about, not everyone needs a phone for phone replacement. You can come up with different options. And what's interesting is that the older generation, again, I'm not picking on anyone, I'm just calling this out. A lot of the times they do want that desk phone, right? But then you take some people who do not want a headset. They're like, you're not putting that headset on my hair. That's not what I'm after. For me, it doesn't matter because I don't have much hair. But it all depends on who it is and what they want. But the great thing is that you can give them the option of what they want. Come up with 3 or 4 different options for them and let them choose. And you'll find each one has a different price point, right? But I think you'll be surprised at what you find, in that most people now would rather just have a speakerphone, a really inexpensive speakerphone, or a headset, something they can wear all day.
Yeah, and Kevin, we were going back and forth with, I put an estimate on, I believe about 20% of organizations' workforces are going to want to keep those hard phones or have a solution like that. The cool thing about the Microsoft Teams phones, the hard phones, is that you actually just use your username and password and multi-factor to get into them, and you can take them from your office to home if you'd like, which is pretty interesting. But it's my assumption right now that only about 20% of the workforce in your office probably wants that physical phone, which right there is a savings on just the standard of, let's buy everybody a hard phone.
For the record, I got a Teams phone because I thought I needed one, and I've never actually used it because I'm always connected to my computer and a headset or a speakerphone anyway. So
Yep.
Exactly. So one more question here, which is around the cost structure, and we got a lot of this prior to the event, which is typical phone contracts, voice contracts, hardware contracts, extremely confusing. And most of the time, the domain team is looking at these invoices for our customers and evaluating them. And there's just so many line items in there. So it's almost been, I was mentioning this, Kevin, yesterday when we were prepping for this, was that it's almost been funny when we go to the marketplace and tell them how actually simple this is. And you have to have your Microsoft licenses. You have to be in the 365 environment. And then in addition to that, for the phone, calling and plans, it's just $20 per user per month. It is
Right.
that simple. You don't need another phone provider. This gets to kind of Rashad's question before. It's that simple. Now, there is an implementation fee.
And that's unlimited? Is that unlimited, the 20?
Unlimited incoming, however, outgoing is something like 3,000, and those are pooled minutes across everyone who has that same license. So the chances of you running out of outbound minutes are very minimal.
Yeah, these days I don't really use that many landline minutes anyway, right?
Yep. So very simple pricing structure, which almost kind of confuses people when we talk about it. And then there's the second part, which is actually the implementation of this and the labor costs. So for everybody that's on this call, Kevin always likes me to have some sort of call to action or benefit for people that join these meetings with us. But we will be doing a 30% discount on the labor to get you up and running on the Microsoft Teams platform, the calling platform specifically. So we're happy to do that for people. But yes, no longer a need for the phone providers and the lines and all of the servers to do all this kind of stuff. They've really simplified it. So Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Before we let everybody go, we are going to announce the winners of our combo headset and webcam giveaway. So the first one I have, and hopefully you're still on the call, is Nicole from Birch Benefits. Nicole, I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but congratulations. You are the winner of our first combo giveaway. So she's still here. If not, we'll work with Nicole and the Birch team to figure out the mailing address to get that to everybody. The second one we are going to give away is to Debbie Polak from New Jersey Family Planning League. Debbie, are you still on the call? Just unmute yourself in the top right. It does look like we have Nicole too. I do see Nicole still. All right, and then finally, to end the call, we'll go with Isaac Kremer from downtown Metuchen. Isaac, if you're on the call and like to say anything, congrats.
Hey, I'm glad I stuck around. I'm a staff of one, but 140 volunteers, so we'll use it.
Awesome. Thanks, Isaac, for joining us. Love to see you on. We'll follow up with a contact to get you over the combo. Well, that is the end of our Microsoft Teams and calling. Now, Kevin would probably like to tell you, and so would Domain with the focus on cybersecurity, that it's great to be everywhere and be able to live in all these different environments. But the third and final discussion, which will happen next month in February, is going to be around working securely from everywhere. Right? It's great that we have access to the cloud and the ability to live in Microsoft and all these different solutions. But one of the main conversations that Domain has been having with our clients over the last year is making sure that wherever employees are, that company is protected securely in these cloud environments or hybrid environments. So we're looking forward to having Kevin and Microsoft back in February, and it will be completely around working securely from everywhere. Thank you so much. I'm Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Technology Partners. We thank you all for joining. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.